and welcome to the Society of Construction Law Australia's official podcast. The podcast where we will look at technical and legal issues facing the Australian construction industry. My name is Sean Brady and I'm one of the directors of the Society. In this episode I speak with Anna Waters from NeuroPower to explore the neuroscience of leadership. Anna is going to talk about how a cognitive revolution has transformed our understanding of how we make decisions. She'll talk about how to apply these lessons to your everyday working environment, and she'll provide insight on practical methodologies and practices to enhance your leadership impact in the workplace. So get ready to discover you're not nearly as rational as you'd like to think you are. Be sure and subscribe for regular updates on issues facing the construction industry. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Twitter and Instagram. I'm Sean Brady and we look forward to you joining us. Hello everyone. Hello Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, great to be here.
So we're going to talk about neuroscience and psychology and a whole pile of stuff. But let's just get one of the things out of the way. If you're a construction professional or if you're a lawyer, why should you be interested in neuroscience and psychology and all those sort of stuff? What's it really got to do with building better structures or being a better construction lawyer?
Sean, historically we've thought of ourselves as very rational beings, and we are. But what neuroscience has shown us is that the rational side of ourself sits in our neofrontal cortex, the frontal lobes of our brain. We now know from a lot of insights from neuroscience and the research that we've been able to do is that there's actually 99% of our decisions are driven by our emotional centers, our limbic brain, which sits in the middle of our brain. So there's a very interesting interplay between the emotional side of our decision making and our rational side. So while we are very rational beings, we're not as rational as we thought. And a lot of our decisions are driven by our emotions. Previously, we thought that we were thinking beings who also felt sometimes, but neuroscience is showing that we're actually emotional beings who think.
Which is really interesting, isn't it? Because in a recent talk you did for the Society of Construction Law, you make the point that we hire not for those emotionals. We try and put them out of the way. And I know we're going to talk about this later on when we get into System 1 and System 2. But we love to say that's unprofessional and we don't talk about those emotions and we just talk about the rational side. But you're saying that just leads to a whole range of problems.
And the research has shown that. What we do when we ignore all of that is we ignore an enormous amount of information, which we'll talk more about in a few minutes. But it's a huge part of what drives us, drives our decisions, drives our interactions. And if we're ignoring this side of ourselves, we're leaving an enormous part of ourselves at home. Historically, we've said to leave the emotion out of decisions and let's be rational about this, which is fine to say, but in reality, that's not actually how it works.
Yeah. Tell that wonderful story that you told at the presentation about the MRI machines. To me, this is just when you listen to this, you can almost feel the distress in it.
Yeah, of course. So there was a huge breakthrough in the neuroscience research by Matthew Lieberman of UCLA, where he put some first-year psychology students into big fMRI machines, which are big, white, noisy machines, and put them in there to measure how they would experience social ostracism. So they did it in a very gentle study where basically they would go into the fMRI and on the screen in front of them, they would be able to throw through a little screen a ball to two other people. Now they were told that there were people in other fMRI machines, but they were actually just the computer. So they were throwing the ball between the three of them. Back and forward, they could choose to throw to player 1 or 2. After a couple of minutes, the experimenter changed the settings and players 2 and 3 just threw the ball between them and basically excluded the first person, the person in the fMRI machines. And what the experimenters were interested in is what was the reaction in their brains. So 2 interesting things happened. One is, in their brains, the same part of their brains lit up as when they were in physical pain.
Wow.
Yeah. So they experienced the ostracism, the social ostracism, as being like similar to being physically hit. So it had a huge impact on them emotionally. The other thing that happened is that in the machines, they actually became quite agitated and angry.
Wow.
They were confused about why they'd been excluded from the ball throwing exercise. And it actually caused quite some ethical concerns for the experiment, and they had to change it so that they told them this was an experiment, that they weren't up to other people, and explained about ostracism and all of this. And even though their visible reaction reduced after that, the same thing happened in their brain. So it's an innate response that they couldn't control to react so intensely to this. So this was arguably one of the biggest findings from neuroscience. And it told us that humans are wired to be social.
Mm-hmm.
What is extraordinary about human beings is that we're wired to live and work in groups. But that also has massive implications for how we work. And the system 1 and system 2,
Which we'll get to. Yep.
which we'll get to.
Yep.
And so this system 1 and system 2, these two different decision-making systems in the brain, once we understand how they work, a lot of other things make a lot more sense.
Okay. So hit the listeners with system 1 and system 2. But this really is the bedrock of what we're about in this particular episode, isn't it?
It is. And before we jump into that, I'll just say that as a management consultant, we get called in to work with individuals, teams and organisations when they're experiencing some challenge in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never about the actual job itself, the task.
So what do you mean by that? I can take a guess. But
Yeah.
let's,
So people can usually do what they're trained to do, their profession.
so in other words, the job they were hired to do, the set of tasks
That's
they are
right.
meant to
Their
execute.
technical or professional responsibilities
Yep.
that they're trained through, that they're qualified to do. Why we get brought in is because of issues with culture, leadership, team dynamics, interpersonal dynamics, all of those messy interpersonal things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we have performance issues. That's when you have two organisations who've merged or two teams who've merged and they're not working and people can't understand why. It's because of these systems in the brain and the way they interplay that we can start to understand the complexities of human dynamics.
And you're basically saying that if we go back to our MRI machine and the exclusion experiment, that it shows that that's hardwired. You can't just say to people, we need a better culture, get a better culture, make it work, and people can't rationally process their way through that necessarily to come out the other side in a natural, innate way. Is that fair?
That's right. This research shows at a very fundamental biological level, we have some hardwiring that make us, beautifully and uniquely human, but also present some challenges.
So tell us about, this is really system 1, system 2, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So system 1 basically sits in your midbrain. And this is where a lot of your emotions sit, but a lot of your automatic processing. Okay. So say once you've learned a new skill or a new task, typing, learning to drive, playing piano, if you do that, whatever you can do that's an automatic task will be run by system 1. It's quick, it's fast, it's automatic, and it basically operates based on the past.
Yep.
So it pattern matches.
Yep.
Conserves energy.
So it basically says, I've seen this before, I know
Yep.
what to do in this situation.
That's right.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily learn easily because it doesn't take every new experience as a new experience.
What do you mean by that?
So even if your situation that you find yourself in is a very unique and different one, it will assume that it's similar to something it's done in the past and bring any baggage or anything back into the current situation, which can create some interesting dynamics in teams when you get 10 people in a team who are all doing that.
And presumably you don't really know you're doing it because it's automatic and that's
right,
just it.
and unconscious.
Okay.
So system 1 is also unconscious.
Okay, but it's a really good system, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. So even though it's the source of some interesting behaviour and all of your emotional intensity, it's also the source of your motivation. So it's why you wake up and go to work. Without it, you would be apathetic. You wouldn't really care. You wouldn't want to show up each day and do what you do.
Okay.
So it's a very important part of your motivation. It also gives you a lot of energy.
Okay.
Whereas
Which can be good or bad.
which can be good or bad. That's right. Yeah. Or helpful or unhelpful, depending on what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. Yep.
System 2 sits in your frontal lobes, as I said before. And system 2 is more strategic, thoughtful, considered, but it's also a lot slower.
And this is the rational brain, isn't it? This is what we.
Yeah.
This is the way we think. We like to think all the time.
This is the stories that we tell ourselves. So this is where our narrative is wrapped up. So if I ask you what makes you brilliant at your job, your rational brain will come up with the answer, and you'll be able to tell me why you're good at your job.
Yep.
That's all sits in your rational brain, and that's all true. If you ask your somebody to list their top 3 weaknesses or where they struggle, often people have a harder time doing that. And the reason is because we're very positive and strengths focused, and our narrative's wrapped up on all our positive things, which is why we're hired.
Yep.
But if we don't have a good visibility on what our blind spots are, they can actually come back to bite us and can prevent us from helping our rational brain achieve what it wants to achieve.
So we've got 2 systems going on in our head whenever we're making decisions. System 1, which is the emotional one, and system 2, which is the more rational one. And tell us the split of decisions, or the percentage of decisions that are made by each. You said this recently at the presentation, and it blew my mind.
Yeah. The current thought is that it's about 99% of your decisions are driven by your system 1.
Your emotional
brain. So when we say to leave emotions out of it, we're actually going to have a lot of difficulty making decisions.
Yep.
If that's what we're actually doing.
Because of course most people think they're using system 2 for all these decisions.
That's right.
And that's why they make rational decisions. So talk a little bit about post-rationalization and how that works with system 1 and system 2.
That's an interesting one. So what we tend to do is our emotional system, or our limbic system, will make the decision to buy the car, to buy the shoes, to buy whatever you've purchased, and system 2 will then post-rationalize it. So we'll come up with a very good reason to our loved ones or colleagues or whoever we need to justify ourselves to, feel that we need to justify ourselves to, about why it was a sensible decision, why it was good value, why we desperately needed it. That's the post-rationalization. And we don't just do it with purchasing decisions. We do it in lots of different aspects of our life.
And do we know we do it? Do we know we post-rationalize, or do we genuinely believe that they were the decisions why we did what we did?
Most people genuinely believe.
Wow.
Yeah. So another interesting study that was done was there on 2 playing cards in front of people. There were 2 different women's faces, and the experimenter showed somebody the 2 different faces and asked them to pick their favorite one. So they picked. They then put them face down on the table, and then they did, a little bit of sleight of hand and showed the other person the face that they hadn't chosen and asked them to justify why they'd chosen the face that they hadn't chosen.
Yes.
80% of people justified it.
Wow.
Didn't even realize that wasn't the face that they hadn't chosen.
Wow.
They just came up with a reason.
Wow.
So it's a very powerful and mostly unconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what makes it presumably so dangerous and so hard to deal with.
That's right. Yeah. But the brilliant thing is it's easy to be aware of, and so that it doesn't impact negatively on our decisions simply by being aware of it.
Yeah.
We have a great analogy.
Yes.
You've heard this.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
So we like to refer to system 1 as the elephant and system 2 as the rider. So inside your brain, there's an elephant and a rider, and they're either constantly fighting or working together, or one of them's ignoring the other one. Whatever interesting dynamics are happening in your head at that point. But it's a good visualization for how these systems interplay or how they could potentially work together. So if we ignore our system 1, the elephants don't like that much. And
so the elephant system 1.
That's right.
If we ignore it, which is what our job tends to teach us we should do, because that's the
right.
elephant that should be
Ignore the
left at home.
emotion. Yep. Then elephants will react to a couple of ways. One of them is that they go on a rampage. They get angry, agitated, frustrated, indignant, self-righteous, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And they're often running. Another option is that they just refuse to move and they sit down and they don't do anything. They don't make a decision. They don't go anywhere. They just stay, and people sort of withdraw.
And this is quite independent of the rider,
Yeah, that's
the
right.
system 2, the rational part of the brain that's actually trying to get them to move or stop moving or slow down. And
Yeah, so often the rider would be attempting to either rein in the elephant or get it moving. Depends on the relationship between the elephant and the rider.
so what do you mean by that? How can you have a relationship, and how are people's relationships different between the... I know we have different elephants, which we're going to talk about in a little while, but how can the relationship between the rider and the elephant can be different between people?
Yeah, so if the relationship's not very healthy, then the elephant will feel like the rider's not listening to them.
So can you give us an example of that?
So if the elephant is feeling tired,
Yep.
so say you as a human, you've not slept for a couple of nights and you're feeling tired, and your rider is very committed to writing a report.
Yep.
Your elephant won't like that.
Yep.
Your elephant is likely to either fall asleep or make a reason to go and eat something or talk to someone or procrastinate, and your rider will be frustrated because you really want to write the report. Your elephant has no interest in it.
Yep.
And it will find the remote and turn on the telly.
Yep.
So your elephant often drives your behaviour. And then the next day you'll think, oh, I really should have written that report. And so it's your rider saying to your elephant, hey, we really needed to do that work, but instead
We did.
you ate chocolate and watched telly and went to bed. That's what your elephant needed.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's what you mean by the relationship.
That's the relationship.
The rider was not aware enough of the tiredness of the elephant to realize, from a rational perspective, that report was just simply not going to get written because the elephant wasn't going to be able to do it. And same with anger. So if your elephant is running around angry and your rational party is trying to tell you that you're not angry.
Yeah, that's right. So you can be really, really angry with somebody, say at work, and your rational brain or your rider is saying, no, they're still learning, or they might not have had all of the information, and your rider's trying desperately to seek some sort of understanding or defend them in some way. Your elephant's just angry.
It just doesn't care.
Just is angry at them.
And is that why you wake up the next morning and you're sorry for the things you said because your elephant's calmed down? And
That's right. So anything you've ever said that you sort of think, oh, I might need to apologise for that, that was all elephants. And your rider then thinks, oh, okay, yeah, if I want to heal this relationship, I'm going to need to make amends.
And in some people, is the relationship between the rider and the elephant better than in other people? And is that what you call emotional intelligence?
Yeah.
Is that pretty much...
That's it. Yeah. Some people don't even have an awareness that they have an elephant that's driving most of their decisions. And that can make it very difficult to manage your elephant if you don't even know it's there. So if there's a big sort of massive elephant that's, guiding you through the day and you don't even know that it's there, that can be quite tricky to manage reactions to things.
So is this the situation where you see someone is clearly really, really angry and you ask them if they're angry and they say they're not?
Yes, that's right.
So they can genuinely believe they're not angry?
Couple of options. One is they don't actually know they're angry. Another one is they're furious, but they don't want to tell you about it right now, so they're masking.
Yep.
So when our elephants are triggered, which is the word that we use for when we're having an elephant moment, we call it, when we're triggered, what actually happens in the brain, in the midbrain, is we have an amygdala hijack. So the amygdala is a small pea-sized part of the brain that sits towards the back of our midbrain.
Mm-hmm.
And when our elephants are rampaging, the amygdala hijacks the information and processing in your midbrain and stops it moving to your rider. So asking somebody who's triggered to be rational is almost impossible. And the amygdala hijack lasts for about 8 seconds. So, but it can be extended. So after the 8 seconds, people can tend to calm down, which is why we say if you're angry, count to 10.
Count to 10.
If you're very angry, count to 100.
So that has a practical basis for why it works.
That's right. So if you're feeling yourself like, the elephant in you rampaging, whatever that, if you're extremely anxious or overwhelmed or angry or agitated, whatever that looks like for you, because it's very different for different people, just know that there's a lot of energy in your midbrain right now. Your rational centers that are needed to carefully navigate the situation are not there. So giving yourself a circuit breaker is a really helpful way of helping to manage it. So whether it's time, whether you just sort of say, hey, can we just take a quick break in this meeting and just take a minute or two, everyone, go and have a quick break, calm down and come back to it. Or whether you can use humour as a circuit breaker. You need to pick your audience carefully with that one. But there's a few different ways, deep breathing can also help. It actually changes your physiological reaction and calms your adrenal system. So deep breathing can actually help if you don't have the luxury of taking a short break.
So if it lasts for 8 seconds, so you said there's some situations where it can be extended. So what are those?
Well, so what we know about elephants is that emotions are contagious. So if you're feeling highly emotional or, for example, really angry about something, everybody else's elephants in the room are going to pick up on that.
Yep.
And you're likely to trigger other people's elephants. And suddenly we have a stampede of elephants, which we're off track.
So this is why, when you're really angry about something and you call that really angry friend of yours, he gets angry about stuff very quickly, and you go for a cup of coffee with them, you're going to get more angry and more agitated rather than actually calming down about it.
That's right. So we can amp up each other's elephants without even meaning to. And you might have the best intentions of supporting your friend and showing loyalty to them over their anger, but may not actually be helping them right now, because the rational brain is the part of the brain that thinks strategically, that builds relationships, that does brilliant work, that thinks around corners. The rider brain is the brilliant part of you. The elephant brain is the energy. It's not the brilliance, and it's not particularly noble. So
this is I think the really interesting issue with this, that you might like to think you get rid of the emotional part of the brain, and then the rational part becomes brilliant and you're able to do stuff. But you're saying that doesn't happen at all. You just lose complete energy. You lose the will to do anything. So you've got this really rational brain that just wants to sit around and not do anything.
That's right. So they did 40,000 lobotomies in the US, middle of last century. So they actually severed the elephant from the rider.
Wow.
It got rid of a lot of dodgy behaviour, but it also left almost a shell of a person. So they weren't able to make decisions. They lost their motivation to work. They lost a lot of their enjoyment of life in terms of enjoying food. They had no excitement or passion for life.
Wow.
It was all very robotic and intellectual, but nothing there driving the machine.
So once we lose that emotional part, the bit that we keep coming back to, that we're told to leave at home when we come to our jobs, we just lose the whole energy for what we're there for in the first place, and we have to sort of live with the good and with the bad.
That's right. And whether, even though we sort of say, leave the emotional part at home, from my perspective, we don't. We bring it to work. And at work, we do have frustrations.
Yep.
People trigger each other all the time, but the difference at work compared to home is that it's not sanctioned. And so people don't feel like they can express how their elephant's feeling, because, remember, we're not meant to be emotional at work, supposedly. And so it creates for some interesting dynamics.
Because from the presentation, you were saying that the fundamental interesting dynamic is that if the elephant is, starting to get into control, and we ignore that elephant, or someone else ignores that elephant, that's pretty much the single worst thing you can do, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's very likely to amp up the elephant.
So suddenly the rider loses complete control and the elephant's off and running, and that's it.
That's right. And probably, recruiting for the stampede.
So everyone else is getting on board with the same set of emotions.
That's right. It often happens.
So what you're really saying is, if you can't ignore, so you can't leave your elephant at home. It's going to come to work with you whether you want it or not.
It's hardwired in,
yeah. You can't ignore it. Other people can't ignore it, because that's going to just make it break loose and stampede, and you're going to have a big problem in your hand. Is what you're saying, that fundamentally it's about improving the relationship between the rider and the elephant, and helping the rider part of people's brains understand the elephant part better. I'm hesitant to use the word to be able to control it, but you seem to at least be aware of it and
work with it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So what do you mean by work? So if I'm really angry about work about something, and my rider is sensing, this elephant is just about to break loose. How do you deal with that from a personal perspective, even before you get into sort of interpersonal?
Yeah. That's really the key and the first step to having a better relationship between your elephant and rider is knowing the signs, understanding what frustrates your elephant, and knowing the early warning signs before you get to that amygdala hijack, which is sort of a crunch point. So you want to be able to see the very first signs of it.
And they're different for different people.
They are. They're very different from different people.
So can you give us a few examples of the sort of ones that people may see for anger, for example?
Yeah. So, well, for example, some people are enormously triggered by people being late to a meeting.
Yep.
So if you walk in 5 minutes late and that's not a particular trigger for you, but it is for somebody else, somebody's elephant's rampaging. They'll be sitting politely and smile and nod, but inside they're actually, the emotional brain's running the show, the elephant's running the show, their rider's nowhere to be seen.
So say for a moment I'm that person. So I'm waiting for you to turn up for this podcast and you're 5 minutes late, and let's say that I'm the sort of person who gets absolutely triggered by lateness. So straight away, my elephant is starting to go off. You don't care because you're not worried about that. Your elephant doesn't care about that. How and my rider knows now this person's late. I know I get angry when people are late. How do you self-regulate? How do you help your rider in that situation? Help the elephant?
So that's personal, individual. So whether it's taking a moment, whether it's self-talk and reframing it, I'm sure she had a great reason for why, I'm sure traffic was bad or parking was difficult or whatever it might be, to encourage your elephant to have empathy and understanding for the other person. So self-talk is one way of doing it.
Yep.
Taking a quick break is another way.
Yep.
But anything that you can, reduce that intensity. One of the methods with the most evidence behind it is to label the emotion.
Okay.
So if you're feeling agitated about something, to be able to label that. Or if you're feeling frustrated, to be able to say, hey, we'd agreed that we were going to meet here at 3:00. It's a bit frustrating that I was here at 3 and you weren't able to.
So do you have to say it out loud? Is it enough for your rider to say to your elephant inside your head, you're really angry because they're late and that's okay? Or do you have to say, hey, obviously in a nice way, you're late and I'm really angry?
It works better if it's out loud.
Wow.
But you need to pick your audience.
I bet you do.
So if your elephant's expressing how your elephant's feeling, you're going to escalate things.
Oh, you have talked about this in the presentation. So explain, this is a really important split, isn't it, between the two?
So the idea is that your rider expresses what your elephant's feeling. That's when you get a good outcome. So if your elephant expresses what your elephant's feeling.
So give us an example of that for the person's late.
Or let's say 10 minutes late, because 5 minutes late is pretty nitpicky. If they're 10 minutes late, right? You might sort of say, hey, that's really slack. What are you doing? We may as well pack up and go home or something. Like it's intense. You'll probably have a tone in there.
Yep.
And it'll be a cut, a purposeful cut or a jab at them.
Yep. And that's what you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and go,
that's right.
I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, we probably don't have a great relationship anymore.
Yeah.
Depending on their elephant and what triggers their elephant, remember, because they're all different.
Yep.
So the idea is that your rider can express how your elephant's feeling. So if you're feeling a bit frustrated about it and you're thinking it's going to impact on the meeting that you're about to have and you're wanting to switch quickly, sort of saying, I was really keen to get started at 3 because I actually need to head off at 3:30 and we're not going to have a lot of time. So it's a bit frustrating that we're starting a few minutes late, but I'm really glad that you're here now.
Okay, yeah.
It's calm, it's expressed, but it's not a jab, and it's sort of, you're looking forward to moving on.
So you're able to basically communicate with your elephant and say, I've made the other person aware of what's upset you, and now we're moving on from that.
That's right.
So in your presentation, and I know we're talking a lot about anger here, we probably should talk about other things, but in the presentation you also talked about this whole concept of what happens when you go to a meeting and someone is clearly furious before the meeting starts. You've got 7 or 8 people in that meeting. Someone is absolutely furious. You have no idea why. Nobody else probably. Well, some may not know why. And you give a really good example of how you deal with that in the presentation. Do you want to run through that?
That's an interesting one. So the reason it's important to deal with that and not just let it go is that for point one, when your elephant's triggered through emotional contagion, you're likely to trigger other people's elephants.
So you're going to make everyone in that room angry.
Or triggered. So
yeah.
it might be anxious, it might be overwhelmed, it might be withdrawn. There's lots of different ways the elephants could look when they're triggered.
Oh, so it'll trigger whatever the other people's particular elephant
That's
is.
right.
Yep.
Yep. So point one, you'll trigger everybody else. Point two is that when people are triggered, they can lose an enormous amounts of their cognitive capacity.
So in other words, system one is overwhelming system two.
Well, system two just doesn't have the energy or the blood flow there.
Wow.
So all of the blood flow's gone to system one.
So you just got an elephant sitting in front of you, and
That's
the
right.
rider who you're paying for,
That's right,
or whoever the company is paying for
is nowhere to be seen.
Is not there. Yep.
Yep. So the likelihood of you making good decisions in that meeting and having a constructive, valuable meeting is extremely low at this point.
Yep.
So you may as well not have it. You'll save everybody the time and energy by not having the meeting.
Yep.
So
that's a pretty, full on and stunning conclusion to come to, isn't it? But we've all been in those meetings.
That's right.
Where you just go, that was worse than not having it.
Yeah, that's right, and does a lot more damage. So the way that we approach that, so if you have somebody who's come into the meeting, they're visibly angry or frustrated or whatever their elephant looks like when it's triggered, what we do is a check-in. So we go around the table and everybody says how they're going, where they're at, how they're tracking, how they're feeling, whatever language that works for that particular group.
Yep.
But everybody just does a quick check-in. So it might be, yep, feeling great, energized, keen to kick on. The next person might say, yep, slightly weary, had a late night working, but I'm, keen to be focused. Third person says, I'm really angry.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the important thing there, presumably, is you're making the riders say what the elephants are feeling. Okay?
Yep. So first of all, the person who'd said that they're angry, already they've had to label it. Labeling is a rider function.
Yep.
So you've already started to move the blood flow from their elephant into their rider.
Yeah.
So labeling it, they've actually had to work out what the label is for the emotion that they're feeling.
Yeah.
So good and fine don't count as check-ins.
Oh.
When people are checking in. Good.
Why not? Why not?
Because they're automatic responses. An elephant is an automatic response.
Oh, wow.
So to be able to think of the language. So how are you feeling right now, Sean?
Happy that this podcast is going okay. Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, but you thought you had to think about it.
I'll think about it, yeah.
Yeah,
I did.
If you might have just said fine if I hadn't just said that they don't count.
That's what I would have said, yeah.
Fine,
good.
automatic. Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
happy,
So that's your elephant, but you've identified that you're happy. So your rider needed to do that. So when someone who's angry needs to identify that they're angry, they actually need to switch on their rider and to think about that. So already you're starting to create the shift.
Yep.
The other thing you're doing is flagging to everybody that person's not actually angry about something in the meeting. So when they say they're angry, you just say, okay, how do you want us to work with you? They might say, hey, I've just had a really terrible meeting. I'm still processing it. I'll be a little bit quiet in this meeting, but I'm actually keen to be here. Great, thanks. You don't need to go any more detail. It's not a therapy session. Thanks, excellent, move on.
So that's stopping the triggering of the other elements elephants in the room at that point.
Yeah, so people don't start getting anxious about, I wonder why they're angry and they don't seem quite right and maybe they don't want to be here and maybe they don't like this decision, and everybody's elephants just basically make up stories to fill in the vacuum because they don't actually know why that person's angry. So it's why it's really important to do the check-ins as long as they're legitimate. And as long as people don't just say that they're fine.
So go to the one that's not legitimate, where you ask the person who is clearly furious and they say they're fine. What happens? So that's presumably the elephant labeling or just not dealing with it at all. So how do you deal with the denial part of this?
So a couple of different ways. The first step of escalation, I would flag, but if it was a colleague of mine, I would try and use a little bit of humour and just sort of say, hey, you don't quite seem yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like something's up. Does it have anything, and see if they respond. If they don't, I'd say, does it have anything to do with the meeting? Or can we just assume that whatever's going on for you, you're processing and you'll rejoin us when you're ready, and see if they respond to that.
So you're basically saying, we all know you're angry. We just are trying to establish you're sort of not angry with us right now.
Yep.
Not angry with this meeting.
Yep.
Which makes sense.
Yep.
That makes complete sense, actually. So one of the really interesting things in the conversations we've had since your presentation is that, and we've alluded to it a little bit, is that there's more than one type of elephant, which means that these elephants behave in a different way and see the world differently. Tell us a little bit about the different types of elephants.
So there's about 9 different types of elephants, and they do react in very different ways. So some elephants get quite angry and self-righteous when they're triggered.
Yep.
Some are quite needy and need a lot of approval from other people and validation. Some are very competitive and success-oriented.
Yep.
So you have all different sorts of elephant reactions. And so I guess at a fundamental level, our own reference point is that other people are similar to us.
Yep.
And the phrase "treat others as you want to be treated" is very well with great intent.
Well intent.
It's just not helpful, because as that you want to be treated is very differently to how other people want to be treated.
Whether your elephant is
That's
needy
right.
or angry or whatever.
That's right.
Whatever it
has
may be.
very different needs.
So can you? I mean, we talked about this a little bit before, but of these 9 different types, they all have names, and we're not going to talk about all of them. You can all go visit Anna and have a chat to her about all of them. Can we talk about a couple of them,
Sure.
or one of them, or a couple of them? Because I think stepping through, what these are, because I'm sure our listeners know they'll either see themselves in this, or they'll see a work colleague or a spouse or a friend in one of these. So just grab one of them to start and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, let me tell you about the achiever.
Mm-hmm.
So the achiever likes action. They like, in terms of momentum and success, they like momentum, progression, anything that's moving forward. Yep. So in the workplace, anything, meetings where there's too much talk and not enough action are likely to start frustrating them.
Yep.
You'll see them start tapping on the table, and after sort of a 20-minute meeting, they'll actually want to start heading out the door. So they'll become quite frustrated if there's endless chatter and endless talk at work. They're also very keen on tracking their progress. So they like to make progress and they like to track it.
Yep.
So they'll have lists and they'll be very keen to monitor to make sure things are on track.
Yes.
They don't like the goalposts changing on them. And this is likely to cause a big trigger for the achiever.
Even if the goalpost changing is a good thing for project success or whatever you want to call it, will that, even though you rationally say to their elephant, sorry, this is changing the rule, maybe it's for the project as a whole, not necessarily for you personally, is that going to frustrate the hell out of them?
They'll probably still feel frustrated, but it will be less of a trigger. So if you can engage their rider with the reason behind it, you can acknowledge and say to them, hey, I know this is frustrating because we got so far down this track, but I think for the success of the project, it's really important that we make these changes and engage them in that and acknowledge that this is frustrating. So you're actually labeling the emotion for them. And preempting the likely trigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these achievers, tell us more about them.
So they're usually very well dressed, very well spoken, and very focused on achieving for the group.
And they use specific words, don't they? Well, elephants use specific words.
Yeah, they like success and achievement and progress and momentum and words like that. So they'll tend to use those sorts of words. They can be quite impatient, just because they're wanting to keep moving things forward, and anything that will slow them down is just frustrating, really. Whereas other elephants, they actually like to talk things through, and they process things by talking.
So let's talk about to contrast these elephants, just as an example. Pick another one, which is the talker who wants to talk these things through.
So let's talk about the loyal skeptic. So they like to talk things through, and they think by talking. So they like to have lots of discussion. They're fairly skeptical and cautious, a little bit anxious about how things will go, but they don't usually see themselves as anxious. What they tend to do in a group is point out all the different ways that a project or piece of work could go wrong.
Yep.
So to everybody else, it looks like they're not on board and that they're a bit of a wet blanket.
Yep.
But really, they're wanting the group to succeed just as much as the achievers. But their brilliance is that they're able to see all the different ways that it could fail. So that's why they point them out. But
that's not a sign of lack of buy-in.
No, that's right. They're actually playing a really important role in the group.
That must do the achievers' heads in.
It does. Yep, because it feels like they're slowing them down. So what the loyal skeptic needs to learn to do is to say, hey, I really want this to be successful. In order for us to get there, can we please address a couple of these concerns? Because if we don't, I'm worried that it won't be a success.
Wow. So if they're dealing with an achiever, then they're telling the achiever, I want the same as you.
That's right.
I just have a different way of going about it.
And usually the achievers will be a lot more patient when they hear it framed that way and be able to address the concerns of the loyal skeptic.
So if we have a meeting with an achiever and a loyal skeptic in a room, and they have a disregard for the stuff we've just talked about, that's where the riders lose control and the elephants can rampage and bash heads and cause all sorts of non-constructive behaviour, shall we say.
Yeah, that's right. So the achievers will become more action-focused and more impatient.
Yep.
And the loyal skeptics will become a lot more paranoid and anxious because they're not feeling like their concerns are being heard or addressed. And so what they're likely to do outside of the meeting is to go and tell everybody else about all the different ways that the project could fail. And then when the achiever hears it through the back channels, we'll have quite an intense reaction to someone going behind their back and talking about all the ways it could fail, even though their intention was actually good.
And is that partly because not only is it sort of undermining the belief in the success of the project, but it's also undermining the belief in the success of the achiever personally?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you're their manager, so you know this is blown up in the office, what do you do?
Remind them that they're both wanting the same thing.
So that's the key.
That's right. Yeah. And acknowledging the perspective that they're both coming from, that the achiever's wanting success for the group, not just for them, and that they're wanting momentum and they're concerned about there's not enough activity, we're not actually going to meet our deadlines. And acknowledging about the loyal skeptic just wants this to succeed as well, but they actually have a really good eye for identifying the risks to the project and that we need to listen to those. So giving them space to maybe document all of them or to talk through somebody. The 3 may not be the best person for them to talk all of the risks through. Maybe they can sort of summarize it and bring it back to them.
Yep.
Just to help manage them. So the social contract that you have in a team where teams are aware of these elephants is that I'll manage my elephant and the team helps me to manage it. And I help everybody else manage their elephants. That's the social contract in a high-performing team.
So that's fascinating. So you're basically saying my emotions are there. I'm going to manage them, but you have to help me.
I'm asking for your help to manage my elephant because it has some strong views that I don't always have control over and it reacts. So in order to help both of us manage my elephant and both of us manage your elephant, let's understand what are the triggers for each of our elephants so that we can help to manage it.
And this is essentially what you do for a living, isn't it? I mean, this is not a sales pitch, but you take teams where there is elephants that people may or may not be aware of and you put that into practice to make it actually work. Yeah,
introduce the concept of elephant rider, help them get to know their elephants. They have individual conversations with each of their team members about what they're going to do. So we make the assumption that high-performing teams have a lot of conflict. And by conflict, I mean elephant conflict.
Yep.
Because rider conflict, you can resolve it.
Yes, because you can
it's much
rationalize it.
That's right, yeah. Elephant conflict just comes up again and again. You know, that person keeps doing this something and they always do that. And why can't they just do that? Whenever you find yourself saying something like that, that's all elephant. So we assume that our elephants are in constant conflict with each other. That's just, they're stepping on each other's toes and that's just how elephants interact. So the idea of high-performing teams is that we accelerate the rate of dealing with the conflict. So we resolve it quickly and move on.
Yeah.
So if I've talked over you in a meeting, someone talking over me in a meeting, that's not a huge trigger for me, but it might be for you.
Yep.
And I know that.
Yep.
But in a meeting, for whatever reason, I talked over you. I know it's a big trigger for you. Outside of the room, I'll just say, hey, Sean, I know I interrupted you in the meeting. Yeah, sorry about that. I, feel really passionate about it. Elephant got away from me, whatever. I know that, that you don't prefer that's how we interact, and we've talked about it before. And you can say, oh, yeah, thanks, and cheers. And it's done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, which is intensely powerful, isn't it? It really
That's right. Otherwise, for the next 3 weeks, you're going to be avoiding me and every meeting, thinking, oh, she's going to do it again. And, and it just perpetuates the elephant conflict. And it's really unnecessary and takes enormous amounts of effort and energy managing all of these interpersonal conflicts when we actually have a lot of work to do.
And do you get into situations where you're helping a team and the communication inherently is so bad between a certain person's rider and their elephant that it's unfixable? Do you get into those situations? Other people would probably say that person has so low emotional intelligence that you just can't work with them. Do you get those situations?
Not that we can't work with them, but we use different frameworks to help people give a language for understanding.
Okay.
So even with people who have really good emotional intelligence understand a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. They might not have had a language for it, but they inherently get it. People with not as high emotional intelligence, they need sort of frameworks and languages to understand so that they can sort of pattern match.
And I mean, it strikes me so much of it is, and I mean this in a good way, it's about expressing your emotions in a way that's not perceived as a weakness.
That's right, and I think it's enormous strength.
Yeah.
As I said, so from what I've seen, and I work with a lot of leaders, the most credible leaders have a really good sense of their elephant. They know what their elephant's like. They know what triggers their elephant. They know how to harness their elephant and use it to motivate them. And they have a really good sense of their rider as well.
Well, let's just talk about that for a second, because we've talked a lot about the negatives of the elephants, but and we have not talked about this before, which is, what do you mean by harness their elephant? I mean, I get it in a sort of a conceptual idea, but how does that work?
Well, let's take my elephant for example. So my elephant is a bit of a perfectionist.
Yep. I think we decided mine was the same, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah. We did. you thought it probably was.
Which doesn't mean we're always perfect, incidentally. Not correct?
No, far from it. Very far from it. It means that's what we're striving for.
Yep.
So the fact that my elephant's striving for perfection means that I have the energy to do a lot of intense, tedious work, stay up late doing work longer than, way longer than working hours until I get the job done, until it's of a high standard. So that gives me a lot of energy, and that's not my rider. My rider's engaged and there to help do the work.
Yep.
But the elephant actually goes the extra mile, because I want to get that outcome, and because I struggle to leave something if I haven't done it.
Yeah.
If we jump back to the example that we talked about a few minutes ago, when you're up late and you're working on a report and your elephant's tired and you turn on the telly and whatever it is, if you have a really good relationship with your elephant, a couple of options. One is you could say, I acknowledge I really need to sleep right now. I can do the report another time. That's fine. You're respectful of your elephant. You go to sleep. You give your body the rest that you need.
Yep.
We don't always have that luxury. And so what the rider can say to the elephant, I understand that you're tired. What can I do? You could, do some push-ups, get your blood flowing, have a coffee, whatever you might want to do to sort of pick yourself up and say, hey, I need 2 hours. Work with me. So this is all happening internally.
Yep.
And so you sort of respect it by not just, charging it on, but doing something to help your elephant pick up the energy and continue on. So that's a really respectful relationship between an elephant and rider, which is what we're aiming for.
So give us the same sort of example with the achiever person we talked about earlier, who always has to be achieving and be seen to be achieving and be seen to be successful. Where I presume the situation is where their elephant is going to be forced into a situation where they have to accept not being seen to be acceptable, or not be seen to be successful. Yeah. How did they have the same chats? Is that they have to sort of say, this is very uncomfortable and I know it's very uncomfortable, but we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. Yeah,
that's right. And for example, it might be them taking responsibility for something that they might not have directly done, but they maybe they were had oversight of a project that hadn't gone well, and they need to take responsibility of that with the client.
Oh, none of our listeners would ever be ever in a situation like that.
So a 3 won't enjoy doing that, and that's probably going to be a big trigger, which the people who report to them may feel that intensely. But they'll need to acknowledge that that's, as the lead for it, that's their role, and that they'll need to do that, and they'll have the similar self-talk.
So and we may be getting a little broad here with this question, but is this the situation where if you find yourself in a job that's not right for you, or a career that has a task demands of you that are completely inconsistent with what your elephant wants? So we're really talking about someone who's in a career they're not passionate about here, and a career that's not for them. Is that pretty much the bottom line there?
Well, they'll certainly be limited in it. The elephant can certainly help you do the long hours and the hard yards.
Mm-hmm.
And if your elephant doesn't want to, it can be very difficult to ask your rider to try and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can run out of puff. So it's not a hard and fast answer, but it's more tricky.
And do you get into situations where you're talking to people where you can see their elephant is so wrong for the situation they're in, but the rider, for a variety of rational reasons, shall we say, keeps prodding that poor elephant to make this work?
It's an interesting question. We also get asked, what's a good makeup of elephants in a team? Is there a good combination? And my answer is that it's helpful to be aware of the elephants, but we can't be limited by them. So I don't hire for elephants, I hire for riders, and I hire for the relationship between the elephant and the rider. So from my perspective, any elephant's capable of anything depending on their rider and their relationship with their rider.
Yeah, so you can pretty much work with any elephant if the rider and the rider's relationship with their elephant is correct. Give us your 3 takeaways from neuroscience for any of us who are in jobs and trying to make it work.
Yeah. So the first one are that emotions are information.
To explain.
So if you're ignoring emotions, you're ignoring an enormous amount of information. So for example, if you're feeling anxious about something, rather than saying that's unhelpful, ignore it, that's actually your elephant nudging your rider saying, hey, this isn't right. That something's not right here.
Yep.
So that's actually information, so that anxiety.
So listen to it.
So listen to it. Yep. If you're feeling angry about the pace of a particular project, it's possibly because looking down the track, you probably won't deliver it on time if you keep going at this pace. So the anger welling up in you that things aren't going as quickly as you'd like is really helpful.
Yep.
When your elephant rampages, it actually disengages people from your mission and your purpose. So
if I feel the project's not moving fast enough and I get really angry and I'm not listened, and then my elephant starts rampaging, then everyone gets sick of listening to me stomping around about how we're going to be late for the project.
And disengage. But otherwise, if you listen to the anger and your rider can explain and can articulate to the people around you the concern and engage them in the mission, you can actually get on with it.
Yep.
Much more quickly. Yep. So emotions, information, listen to it, don't ignore it.
Yep.
The second one would be that elephants are unique. So we've talked about the 9 different elephants. We talked about a couple of them, the achiever and the loyal skeptic and the perfectionist. There's 9 different types. They're all unique. Don't treat other people as you want to be treated. Treat them as they want to be treated.
Yep.
And know that they're very different limbic reactions. Rather than saying they shouldn't have reacted that way. Yep. Well, they did. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Yeah. So acknowledging they don't react in the same ways that you do about things, and you don't react in the same ways that they do. So just that appreciation for the diversity and uniqueness of people's reactions.
Yep.
The last one would be that the elephants really need to be guided by the riders and to work on that relationship. So if you don't know what your elephant's like, if you don't have a great relationship between your elephant and rider, then get to know it. Just start watching it. Watching everything that comes out of your mouth either comes from your elephant or your rider. So start to notice. If there's a tone, if there's that frustration, if you're feeling like you're gritting your teeth or clenching your fists or something, you're possibly an elephant.
Yep.
So just start noticing when you're an elephant, when you're a rider, because they're incredibly different states. And what was enormously fascinating to me when I started working in this space 5 years ago, specifically with these elephants, was that people would seem very inconsistent. So one day, or even in one meeting, they would be driven and high energy, and they would have humor, and they'd sort of run the meeting, and and then the next day they would sort of be sitting back in their chair and reflective and sort of a bit more cautious, and it would seem like a completely different person. Understanding this gives me a really good sense of how that actually makes sense, knowing their elephant and the rider.
So we're just swapping between one and the other.
That's right. Yeah, so we're switching, so you get a different response based on it. So the way that you sell to clients, the way that you articulate your own value proposition will depend on who you're actually talking to and what's most likely going to resonate with them.
And resonate with their
elephant and with their rider.
Wow.
Yep.
Anna Waters, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.